Hello everyone, JD here, CEO of Sight for White and White Sense. As we move through the season, many of us have noticed how quickly things are changing around us. The days are slowly getting lighter and there's a lot more happening in our communities. And it's a good time to check in with one another. There's so many ongoing conversations nationally about health, well-being and staying connected, and we are really being reminded just how important local support really is. That being said, we have some news for our hearing impaired community. We'll be soon welcoming hearing dogs who are going to be based with us once a month, and these visits will offer a friendly, relaxed space to meet others, learn more about the support that's available, and understand how hearing dogs can help people live more independently and confidently. These sessions are about bringing people together, sharing experiences, and strengthening our community. So if you are hearing impaired, or you are supporting someone who is, or you feel you'd benefit from additional support or information, we'd really encourage you to get in touch to find out more. And as always, thank you for being part of Sight for White. Your involvement, your feedback, and presence mean such a great deal, and we look forward to welcoming you back very soon. Thank you.
Here is this week's charity news, 20th of February 2026.
Swimming at Medina is on Monday between 1:15 p.m. and 2 p.m. We have the whole pool, so whether you wish to swim lanes or just have gentle exercise in the pool, you will be made very welcome. The cost is £6 and transport is available, although limited. All members are very welcome to join.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday starting at 10 a.m. until 11:30. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment. Mix and Mingle is on Thursday at Millbrook House and we have a waiting list, so if you would like to join it, please call the office.
Our next stride is on Friday the 27th. The walk will be around 6 miles and starting at Arreton. If you would like to join, please call the office and further details can be given.
We have been invited to a taster session of short mat bowls. This would be on a Tuesday morning and transport can be provided from either Millbrook House or Newport bus station. If you would like to have a go, please call the office as places are limited.
The fundraising committee are appealing for any items suitable for raffles, tombolas, etc. that can be used throughout the year. If you are able to drop off at Millbrook, or if you are unable to come in, please call the office and we can arrange collection. We are also still collecting Christmas items for our summer event. Yes, that is correct. Christmas in the summer. So if you or your family have any items, please do not hesitate to contact the office.
Our Easter knitting campaign is now ready and the patterns are available. So if you are able to knit or crochet and have a friend, neighbour or family member who can help us to raise valuable funds, please call and speak to Susan, who can either send out a pattern or email them to you. Our plan is for the Easter novelties to go on sale from the 1st of March.
This is Michael reading an article from Ireland Echo. 6-week closure of Military Road to allow for coastal path upgrades. A section of Military Road will be closed for a 6-week period on weekdays only to allow for improvements to the coastal footpath. The Isle of Wight Council, working with Ireland Roads, Natural England and local landowners, is advising residents of upcoming footpath improvements from the 2nd of March that will result in the temporary closure of a short section of the iconic road. These improvements are essential in unlocking a stretch of the King Charles III of England coast path network, in particular the opening of the IOW4 between Binnell Bay and Chillerton Chine. The upgrades are necessary in providing a safe and convenient inland detour on this trail and protecting the future of the overall coastal walking network. Phase 1 of the improvements will begin on the 2nd of March and will last for 6 weeks. This will involve the construction of 480 metres of self-binding gravel footway either side of Bryston Viaduct near the stunning Grange Chine. Once completed, the officially opened, residents and tourists alike will be able to enjoy the National Trail status of the coastal walking route between Culver Down and Colwell Bay. For the safety of workers, drivers and residents, a road closure will be in place at all times on weekdays, with the road reopened at weekends under temporary traffic signals to maintain access. No vehicles, pedestrians or cyclists will be able to travel through the closure area at all times on weekdays. A signed diversion route will be in place and the road will be open on Good Friday, Easter Sunday and Easter Monday, though temporary traffic signals will remain in place. Phase 2 and 3 of the works will require the road to close for a maximum of 1 day later on in May, and will involve creating a safe pedestrian route in the banks for the Grange Chine immediately to the north of the viaduct, and a new footbridge access the Chine. The improvements are needed after the original coastal footpath at the mouth of the Grange Chine was lost to storm damage and erosion. As the widening chine and unstable banks make replacing a footbridge at the beach end unfeasible, the Rights of Way Service has been working with Natural England, Island Roads, and affected landowners to design a new inland route. All costs for the Inland Coast Path works are fully funded by Natural England, and the route off the highway network has been secured with the cooperation of landowners. Darrell Clark, Rights of the Way manager at Isle of Wight Council, says, "The Isle of Wight's glorious coastline is entirely unique, but challenging in places. Due to the widening chine and unstable banks, it is regrettable that a truly coastal route is no longer feasible at Grange Chine Beach. However, these improvements will bring long-term benefits that will allow residents and tourists alike to experience and enjoy the King Charles III of England Coast Path, the island's first national trail for years to come. While slightly inland from the coast, the new route will provide stunning views of the viaduct, which many people might not know exists. While we recognise that these improvements may cause inconvenience, we thank all residents and landowners for their cooperation as we look to improve safety and open up new pedestrian access. All improvements are expected to be finished by the end of May, enabling the opening of the IOW4 and continuous coastal walking between Culver Down and Colwell Bay in the summer.
This is Patrina reading from the Isle of Wight Radio. New heritage orchard planted at Haven Street to boost biodiversity. The Isle of Wight Steam Railway is supporting biodiversity and the creation of new green spaces by planting a heritage orchard at Haven Street. The project, delivered in partnership with Wight Nature Fund and Haven Street and Ashley Parish Council, has seen trees planted in the railway's overflow car park, thanks to funding from the Trees Council Branching Out Fund. Branching Out provides grants of between $250 and $2,500 to community groups, schools and charities to help establish trees, hedgerows and orchards during the winter planting season. Local charity Wight Nature Fund, which administers the Isle of Wight Tree Warden Network, worked with the Isle of Wight Steam Railway to secure the funding. A community planting day was held on Saturday the 7th of February, with strong support from local volunteers and volunteers from the Steam Railway. The chair of Haven Street and Ashley Parish Council, Tony Barrow, attended the event representing the Parish Council's Tree Warden scheme, and also in his role as a trustee of the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. He praised the initiative, saying it would enrich the local environment while helping to preserve heritage fruit varieties. Among the trees planted was a Howgate Wonder apple tree, a heritage variety first raised in Bembridge in 1915 and known for producing some of the heaviest apples in the UK. Councillor Glyn Brassington, a Bembridge tree warden and keen tree enthusiast, helped plant the tree. Another local variety added to the orchard was Stein Steedling, first cultivated in 1893. The apple is described as juicy and sweet, with a strong aroma and flavour. While it may take 4 or 5 years for the trees to bear fruit, the spring blossom is expected to attract pollinating insects and improve the appearance of what was previously an empty field. Despite rainy conditions on the day, volunteers said they were already looking forward to the trees providing shade for summer picnics in years to come. Chair of Wight Nature Fund, Steve Cowley, thanked everyone involved, saying appreciation also went to the Tree Council for funding the project and to volunteers for their hard work. Now in its 18th year, the Branching Out programme has supported hundreds of projects across the UK, creating new wildlife habitats and long-lasting green spaces for communities and visitors to enjoy. The Tree Council says the scheme focuses on planting a variety of tree species with guidance provided on tree selection and protection as part of the grant process. Grants Officer Geraldine Craven said, "Branching Out gives communities a chance to get their spades in the ground and establish trees and orchards that enhance biodiversity." More information about the Branching Out Fund can be found on the Trees Council's website.
Small Island Big Heart Project offers hope to those who are affected by cardiac arrest, from the Island Echo, read by Joyce. A new initiative aimed at supporting people impacted by cardiac arrest on the Isle of Wight is set to strengthen the help available to survivors, co-survivors and bystanders thanks to national funding and the work of the Isle of Wight Ambulance Service. Staff. The Small Island Big Heart project is managed by Isle of Wight Ambulance Service and builds on existing efforts to improve survival rates across the Isle of Wight. This includes increasing access to CPR training and public access defibrillators in the community, alongside further developments of the Isle of Wight Ambulance Life After Cardiac Arrest Network, known as LACA. LACA has supported people locally for several years by connecting those who want to share their experiences with others who have been through similar events. The Small Island Big Heart project aims to expand the network and raise awareness, offering hope and reassurance to those who need it most. For Guy Churchill, the day of his cardiac arrest began as a normal morning. He had left home to take part in Park Run at Apley Park when he collapsed around 1 kilometre into his run. Nearby runners immediately began CPR while another fetched a defibrillator. Guy was shocked twice before taken by ambulance and hovercraft to Portsmouth for further treatment. Guy remembers nothing from saying goodbye to his wife that morning until 48 hours after his cardiac arrest. Guy Churchill has said, "I was lucky to stay in touch with a fellow patient who had the same surgery on the same day. We've been able to compare aches and pains and any symptoms we have experienced." Around 3 months after leaving hospital, Louise from LACA contacted us, not only to check in on how I was doing, but ask whether my wife would like some support too. It was nice to have a caring voice, asking if we were okay, and I feel that this contact has been very beneficial, as without it we would have felt very alone. Louise Walker, Head of Education and Community Response at Isle of Wight Ambulance Service, has said, "Having the privilege of working with cardiac arrest survivors is something I am incredibly grateful for. You know we are making a real difference when you have survivors and their loved ones saying how important it was for them to have access to this group. To anyone going through this, please remember there is support out there and you are not alone." Another couple who understand the value of the LACA group are Gwen and her now husband Bob. Valentine's Day marks 3 years since Bob collapsed at home, and Gwen began CPR. Thanks to her quick actions and the emergency teams who cared for him, Bob survived. After 25 years together, Bob later proposed, and the couple were married 3 months later. Gwen has said, "It's hard for people to understand that you watched your loved one die, but the LACA group showed me that I wasn't alone. Family and friends were incredibly supportive and caring, but they didn't get it like those in the group do. As co-survivors, we need information to make sense of what happened too, and help separate the emotion from the facts. We still have tears and low moments because the shock never leaves you, but I really believe it's important to seek out others who have also lived through the same experience."
This is Michael reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Council proposes scrapping of free parking locations across the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight Council has set out plans to introduce paid parking at 7 additional locations across the Isle of Wight as part of its latest budget proposals. Under the plans, new pay and display zones could be introduced at St James's Street in Newport, Egypt Esplanade in Cowes, Princess Esplanade in Gurnard, and Fort Victoria near Yarmouth. Charges are also being proposed for on-street bays in several busy areas, including Union Street in Ryde, Crocker Street in Newport, Sandown High Street in Sandown, and Regent Street in Shanklin. The council says the proposals come amid what is described as exceptional financial pressures. If approved, the changes are expected to generate an additional £162,000 in revenue during the 2026 to 2027 financial year. The plans follow a period at the end of 2025 when council-owned long-stay car parks were free between midday and 6 p.m. to support local businesses. The proposals are due to be discussed by a committee on the 20th of February before being considered by full council at a later date.
This is Patrina reading from the Island Echo. Yarmouth Bridge to close for 3 days due to annual service. Yarmouth Bridge will go through its annual servicing work next month, resulting in a 3-day closure for all traffic. Island Roads will be undertaking various work to keep the structure safe and reliable between the 16th to the 27th of March. The road will be open to pedestrians throughout the work, subject to some potential minor delays, but will need to be closed to traffic for up to 3 days on the 17th, 18th and 19th of March, between the hours of 9:30 and 15:30. Mariners are also advised that it is best to avoid trying to navigate the bridge during this time. But if travel is essential, then they should contact the harbour master as far in advance as possible, and Island Roads will seek to accommodate journeys. While the bridge is closed to traffic, the usual diversion via Thorley Road, Wilmingham Lane and the Middle Road will be in place. An Island Road spokesperson has said this work is carried out annually as part of a planned programme to ensure the bridge is maintained in good, reliable working order. We apologise in advance for any inconvenience and thank residents for their understanding.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read today by me, Morris.
And me, Carolyn.
And we begin with more news items taken from the County Press and the Observer. So this is a headline that reads, "Frustration over delay to the post." Royal Mail has sought to explain delays to deliveries on the Isle of Wight after residents reported having no post for days on end. County Press readers got in touch to share their frustrations over a lack of mail. One resident said he had to resort to driving to the delivery office to pick up his post. While there, he said he was told delays are down to staff having no overtime, meaning not all post is being delivered on time. The second reason he said he was given was the considerable amount of roadworks holding drivers up. When contacted by the County Press, Royal Mail said delays are typically down to temporary factors such as resourcing pressure. A spokesperson said, "We understand how frustrating and concerning it can be when post does not arrive as expected. Where short-term delays do occur, they are typically limited to individual routes and can be caused by temporary factors such as resourcing pressure. When this happens, performance is reviewed locally and additional support is put in place to restore regular deliveries as quickly as possible. We continue to use overtime where it is needed to support deliveries and ensure customers receive their mail."
Miracle outcome as bus rolls off road on its side. Passengers and a bus driver escaped serious injury after a major crash involving a double-decker near Brading. The Southern Vectors bus left the road and rolled onto its side off Marshcombe Chute just before 8 a.m. yesterday, Thursday. Multiple police, fire, paramedic and ambulance teams rushed to the scene close to Yarbridge. Marshcombe Chute was immediately closed between Yarbridge and the Yaverland roundabout. Due to the new road closure and flooding on Morton Common, a closure was also put in place at Brading Down Road. Southern Vectors confirmed 4 people were on board at the time of the collision, 3 passengers and the driver. At the time, a spokesperson for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary said, "Luckily, there were no serious injuries. Please be aware we will be assisting the recovery of the vehicle and therefore closing the road from midday. I don't know how long this will take due to the size of the vehicle, but please be aware Brading Down Road will pretty much become a no-through road for this period due to roadworks, recovery and flooding of Morton Common. I would suggest using other routes between midday and around 2 p.m. A Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service spokesperson said, "Shortly before 8 a.m, crews from Ryde, Sandown and Newport were alerted to a collision in Brading in which a double-decker bus rolled onto its side. Police officers closed the road whilst ambulance paramedics treated a number of casualties. Firefighters worked to stabilise the vehicle before leaving the scene at around 9 a.m. At the time of the crash, Island Road said it worked closely with the police, utilities and others to try and alleviate traffic congestion in the east of the island, including on-site marshalling after bus crash. The safety of road users remains our priority, a spokesperson said. Marshcombe Chute reopened for a time, but closed again at midday to allow Stag Lane motors to recover the bus.
Vital ATM back in village after outcry. A Vital ATM has been reinstated at Shalfleet. Following a previous withdrawal, a new free-to-use cash machine is now fully installed and operational at Shalfleet village stores with a new provider. Last autumn, Parish Councillor Jonathan Hill wrote to ATM giant NCR Artleos about the cash machine's removal, decrying a dereliction of corporate responsibility. He urged the American business to immediately reconsider the decision. The company had cited insufficient profitability. Councillor Hill said the ATM's reinstatement was a vital service, helping to keep the village connected, supported and resilient. He said the return of cash access is the result of determined collaborative effort. Access to cash remains essential for many residents, particularly older people and those in rural areas where banks have disappeared. This is what can be achieved when a community stands together.
Dance and Variety Night wows the audience. A night of glitz, dance and variety wowed audiences in Ryde. An evening entitled Glamour, Sparkle and Cabaret was held at the department on January the 30th, raising £400 for the Freddie to Kenya fundraiser. The event was to support a young man's upcoming expedition to Kenya, which will include working and living in local communities. Laura Home, show organiser, said, "I am immensely proud of the performers and special gratitude to the audience whose energy brought the room alive. The cabaret-style event featured a vibrant mix of dance, variety acts and live entertainment, blending high-energy group numbers with solo performances. The Embracing Dance Diamonds delivered routines and solos, while guest performers added extra excitement to the night. Compares kept the evening running smoothly and ensured a lively atmosphere from start to finish. Plans are already in motion for future shows, along with workshops and classes, offering more opportunities for the community to enjoy and take part in live entertainment. Those interested in upcoming events can follow the Embracing Dance on social media."
Shortage of rentals deepens home issue. A shortage of rental accommodation since COVID and the increasing cost of living has deepened the Isle of Wight's housing crisis, and a new council report shows. Hundreds of island households have been added to the Isle of Wight's housing register for social homes over the last few years. An adult social care, public health and housing needs committee paper shows 2,596 households were registered in 2024, up from 2,357 in 2021. The report says the upward trend is due to the overall shortage of rented accommodation since COVID, the lack of new build for affordable rents, and the effect of the cost of living crisis. Council data also shows that at the end of 2025, 240 households were recorded as homeless or living in temporary or emergency accommodation. Councillor Peter Spink, Empowering Islanders representative for Freshwater North and Yarmouth, said, "Rising overheads have made it increasingly difficult for housing associations and others to provide social rent housing. Unless this is addressed, the number of residents on the housing register will increase. The government has pledged funding for social rent housing. The council must ensure that it receives its fair share of this. It must also be more proactive in bringing forward council-owned land for social housing. The land disposal policy introduced by Empowering Islanders requires that instead of selling off land to private developers, its suitability for social rent housing is assessed. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson said, "The latest housing need and homelessness figures highlight the significant pressure facing the island, much like many areas across the country." The council continues to work tirelessly to support residents who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and our priority remains ensuring that people have access to safe and suitable accommodation. We are seeing sustained demand for temporary accommodation alongside year-on-year increases in the number of residents on the housing register and those presenting as rough sleeping. These trends reflect wider pressures in the national housing market, as well as the increasingly complex needs of some of the people we are supporting. The report going to committee this week sets out our ongoing commitment to keeping families out of bed and breakfast accommodation.
Key dates for local elections as preparations getting underway. Key dates for May's local elections have been revealed as preparations get underway. Polling stations being booked and arrangements for on-the-ground personnel to staff them are taking place, a council spokesperson said. The elections will be on May the 7th, 7 years after islanders last had their say in council elections. That saw the previous Conservative administration lose their majority and the Alliance Group take power. County Hall said in a statement, "Isle of Wight Council is in the process of booking polling stations for each of the electoral divisions in readiness for the election on May the 7th. Arrangements for staffing polling stations and all other administrative arrangements are also taking place. We would remind people who have had postal votes that they are due to a change in the law, they need to reply for them by the end of this month if they originally had them before January 2024. The local authority has published a timetable of proceedings ahead of the election. Publication of notice of election on Monday, March the 30th. Receipt of nominations at 4 p.m. on Thursday, April the 9th. Withdrawal of candidate by 4 p.m. on Thursday, April the 9th. Appointment of election agents, 4 p.m. Thursday, April the 9th. Publication of notice of election agents, 4 p.m. on Thursday the 9th of April. Publication of statements of persons nominated, 4 p.m. Friday the 10th of April. Last date for registration is on Monday, April the 20th. Receipt of postal applications, 5 p.m. Tuesday, April the 21st. Last day for voter authority certificates, 5 p.m. Tuesday, April the 28th. Publication of notice of poll, Tuesday, April the 28th. Receipt of proxy vote applications is 5 p.m. Tuesday, April the 28th. Appointment of poll and count agents, Wednesday, April the 29th. First day to issue replacement lost postal ballot papers, Thursday, April the 30th. Last day to issue replacement spoilt or lost postal ballot papers, 5 p.m, Thursday, May the 7th. Receipt of emergency proxy vote applications, 5 p.m, Thursday, May the 7th. Day of poll, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m, Thursday, the 7th of May. Return of election expenses, Thursday, the 11th of June. All aboard electric buses. What a way to travel. The Isle of Wight's new fleet of electric buses have started arriving ahead of their launch next month. That's March. In total, 31 new electric vehicles are being rolled out by Southern Vectus. They have been funded through the Department for Transport's Zebra 2, which stands for Zero Emission Bus Regional Area scheme. Southern Vectus has also invested £10.7 million, and the Isle of Wight Council has put in £733,000. The UK-built Wright Bus Electroliner double-deckers will initially be used for engineering and driver training before entering service later in March. Southern Vectus General Manager Richard Tildesley said the new vehicles will have a distinct appearance, and those living in or visiting the Isle of Wight will be sure to notice them travelling across the island. Our depot is now equipped and ready to ensure our new fleet is charged and set to revolutionise our network here. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans, Chair of the Council's Economy, Regeneration, Transport and Infrastructure Committee, said, "The arrival of these first electric buses marks an exciting and important step in our journey to modernise the island's transport network. Our partnership means islanders will benefit from cleaner, quieter and more reliable journeys while helping us reduce emissions and improve air quality."
New bridge charge would hit those with least. A proposed new floating bridge charge for under-19s as part of devastating Isle of Wight Council budget plans would hit those who have the least, a councillor said. East Cowes representative Carl Love cited alternatives to the savings proposal introduced without any consultation whatsoever, such as offered improved marketing on the chain ferry to raise income and upgrading its ticketing system. Introducing the charge outside school travel hours would bring in an extra £5,000 for 2026/7, according to a Policy, Finance and Resources Committee report. It would amount to 60p for a casual single, £1 for a casual return, and 30p with a saver card. Councillor Love said the policy would impose costs on participating in extracurricular activities such as sailing or scout groups. He said this has been introduced without any consultation into that document whatsoever, and there's been no discussion with any of the appropriate committees such as education. That's a discrimination because no other pupils anywhere on the island will have to pay to go and do additional activities such as being in the Scouts or go to UKSA. Councillor Love said he put forward alternative revenue raising ideas such as improved marketing, upselling opportunities, including hats, badges, whistles, and upgrading the outdated ticketing system.
Romance fraudster sent to jail. A 57-year-old man has been jailed for 2 years after admitting orchestrating a romance fraud which cost his victim more than £11,000. Andrew Cosham of Milne Way in Newport appeared at Hove Crown Court on February the 16th, where he was sentenced to 2 years' imprisonment. Cosham first met his victim on a dating site in the summer of 2019. After speaking frequently, they arranged to meet, but on the day the victim discovered she had been blocked. A year later, in the summer of 2020, Cosham made contact again, offering excuses for his disappearance and persuading her to resume the relationship. The pair communicated regularly online before meeting in person in spring 2021. Cosham began staying with the victim most weekends and over time for extended periods during the week. She gave him a set of keys and introduced him to her family, believing they were in a committed long-term relationship. In September 2021, Cosham asked for £200, and 2 weeks later he cut off contact again and did not repay the money. He reappeared months later, in June 2022, claiming he had been distressed due to ongoing divorce appeal proceedings. Cosham is said to have convinced the victim to restart the relationship, telling her they would marry and buy a house together once his bank account, said to contain $3 million, was unfrozen following the appeal. The pair attended multiple house viewings and the victim paid for a survey on one property. However, Cosham repeatedly claimed there were issues with each property and they continued searching. During this period, Cosham told the victim he needed money for a series of urgent financial problems. These included helping a sister in poor health, repaying council tax arrears, settling debts with a storage company and a phone provider, and paying fines and court costs following an altercation in Brighton. He used his sister's bank account to receive funds from the victim before withdrawing large sums for his own use. Police confirmed his sister was not involved in the offending. The victim also received messages from someone claiming to be Cosham's solicitor, claiming further legal fees were required to secure his release from court and assuring her his bank account would soon be unfrozen. In total, Cosham persuaded the victim to hand over more than £11,000. He then ceased contact and never repaid the money. Sussex police described the investigation as complex due to the extensive falsehoods Cosham had told. He was charged with fraud by false representation and appeared at Worthing Magistrates Court on October the 28th, where he pleaded guilty. Cosham was jailed and made subject to a restraining order. Detective Sergeant Rodney Davies said, "Romance fraud is a particularly cruel offence. The financial loss can have lasting consequences, but the emotional impact from the extensive manipulation can be truly devastating."
No sailings after terminal hit by ferry. There was major disruption on White Link's Fishbourne to Portsmouth route on Tuesday, February the 17th, after a ferry collided with the Gun Wharf terminal. Sailings were cancelled after St Clair was involved in what was described as a heavy berthing incident. It was later confirmed the vessel clipped the berthing infrastructure on arrival, causing damage to both the port and the ship. As a result, the route had to be suspended for the remainder of the day, with full refunds being issued for all cancelled sailings. In a statement, White Link said, "We sincerely apologise for the cancellations and disruption experienced on our Portsmouth to Fishbourne route. Some sailings were forced to depart from Portsmouth International Port, and the following day, Wednesday, services returned, albeit with delays." By 1:40 p.m. yesterday, White Link said that the service was running back on time and customers can expect a normal timetable across all routes. Another spokesperson said, "Once again, we thank you for your patience and understanding over the past few days."
Woman died as she waited. A 97-year-old woman died after being told she would have to wait 10 days to be transferred to hospital for an X-ray following a suspected fractured hip, a coroner's court has heard. Babette Dorothy Burge from Newport died on October the 19th, 2025, before the appointment took place. An inquest into her death was opened at the Isle of Wight Coroner's Court on Friday, February the 13th. The court heard that Mrs. Burge was found on the floor of her home on October the 14th by her carer following a suspected fall. A paramedic from a local GP surgery attended the address to assess her condition. During the examination, it was found that Mrs. Burge's leg was shortened and rotated, indicating a fractured or broken hip. Despite her age, immobility, and the seriousness of the injury, the court was told that Mrs. Burge was not transferred immediately to the hospital. Instead, she was informed that a transfer from her home to St Mary's Hospital would be organised for 10 days' time. However, Mrs. Burge died before that appointment could take place. The court heard that when her carer returned on October the 19th, they noticed mottling to Mrs. Burge's skin and that she was breathing rapidly. Shortly before 1 p.m, during the carer's visit, Mrs. Burge stopped breathing and died. Her medical cause of death was given as pneumonia, with immobility and a fracture of her left femoral neck. The bone connecting thigh to hip were recorded as contributing factors. Coroner Caroline Summeray offered her condolences to Mrs. Burgess's family and set a provisional date of August the 12th for a full inquest. The inquest is expected to examine the circumstances of Mrs. Burgess's death, the delay in transfer, and the care provided following Mrs. Burgess' fall.
Celebrating apprentices and employers. Apprentices and employers have been celebrated for their achievements and dedication. The Isle of Wight College held its annual Apprenticeship Awards at the Royal Yacht Squadron in Cowes on Thursday, February the 12th. The ceremony, held during National Apprenticeship Week, honoured apprenticeship achievements from March 2025 to January 2026. Ros Parker, Principal and Chief Executive of the college, said, "Apprenticeships are life-changing pathways that connect learning with meaningful careers. Tonight, we celebrated not only the achievements of our apprentices, but also the unwavering support of employers who continue to open doors for people across the island. The awards recognise success across a diverse range of industries. Luca Ferrari, a healthcare engineering specialist technician apprentice, was named Apprentice of the Year. Other awards included Excellent Progress in Functional Skills, Outstanding Personal Development, and the Apprenticeship Resilience Awards. The college also praised employers for their role in developing new talent, and the Isle of Wight Council was named Employer of the Year. Sarah Weech, Chair of Governors at the college, and Sarah Teague, Strategic Manager for People and Organisational Development at the Isle of Wight Council, spoke at the ceremony.
Attraction reassures visitors. Popular attraction Blackgang Chine has sought to reassure visitors after concerns were raised by the public following land movement around the site. Pictures taken earlier this month by community interest company Restore the Story shows the edge of the cliff to be very close to some of Blackgang Chine's attractions, including the maze and the T-Rex enclosure. However, the theme park has sought to reassure visitors that there has been no significant new movement. The park's monitoring practice through movement sensors and drone flights has not picked up on anything significant, the attraction confirmed. A spokesperson said, "The most dramatic slip that can be seen on the beach in the images is from far lower on the cliff, which protrudes far wider than our perimeter. It has not fallen directly from our cliff-top boundary." When asked if the park is concerned about the movement of land and whether they will be closing any parts of the park in 2026, Blackgang Chine said, "We are always monitoring the land and will take the appropriate action as and when it is needed. Safety of the staff, guests, as well as preserving any attractions are always our top priority. The management are always monitoring and confirm this not fresh development or new slips. It is quite familiar and what we expect to see most winters. This is why we are so diligent with our monitoring of land through both movement centres and regular drone flights to capture images and footage." The Isle of Wight Council said in a statement, The council has no jurisdiction over this area of private land. The park owners are responsible for maintaining the safety of visitors and workers in the park and have their own on-site monitoring equipment in place. Blackgang Chine is advertised as the UK's oldest theme park, dating back to 1843. The attraction is due to open for its 183rd season on Saturday, March the 21st.
Comedy Club is fantastic. An Isle of Wight comedy club has received a ringing endorsement from a national comedy legend. Jack's Comedy Club has been backed by comedian and actor John Thompson, known for his roles in The Fast Show and Cold Feet. Mr. Thompson recorded a video message calling the venue fantastic and the place to be for comedy in 2026, complete with his iconic "Suits you, sir" catchphrase. The endorsement comes as the club prepares for its biggest season yet, kicking off with Jason Patterson performing at Ventnor Arts Club. Jack Clay, owner of Jack's Comedy Club, said, "To have someone of John Thompson's calibre backing what we're doing here on the island is incredible. We've been working hard to bring top-tier London circuit comedy to the Isle of Wight, and having a legend like John recognise that effort really puts us on the map for the 2026 season. We can't wait to get started at Ventnor Arts Club this month." The club has quickly become a favourite among islanders for its intimate atmosphere and strong lineups. Tickets for the Ventnor Arts Club show are available through the club's official channels.
Social housing set for council sites. New social rent homes could be delivered on 6 key Isle of Wight Council-owned sites, including former school land and the old driving test centre. The Policy, Finance and Resources Committee is due to look at a list of places in Lake, Nettleston, Newport and Yarmouth where social housing may be viable. It comes amid a £210,000 award for County Hall from the Council House Building Support Fund, helping to bring the sites forward through the planning process. The grant does not go towards house building. Social rent homes are defined by housing charity Shelter as those which are truly affordable, have rents linked to local incomes and are secure. The Council House Building Support Fund forms part of the government's Council House Building Skills and Capacity Programme launched last year. The list: Berry Hill, Lake, former Island Learning Centre, Eddington Road, Nettleston, Grazing Field, 17 Fairley Road, Newport, former Social Services HQ, Medina Way, Newport, former Driving Test Centre, Pyle Street, Newport, acquired from Home England, Mill Lane, Yarmouth, part of former Yarmouth School. The report says the schedule includes a list of 6 key sites for priority consideration for assessment of suitability and viability for social rent housing purposes. The Council House Building Support Fund grant is solely revenue to help bring forward the identified sites through the planning process. It does not include the actual delivery of any house building for which no funding has yet been identified. The report also states, nor has any viability testing yet been undertaken on the 6 sites. It is important to note that social rent housing schemes may not be viable without additional financial support. Progress would require gaining access to external grant funding, such as the government's new £39 billion social and affordable homes programme, or looking at alternative delivery models. The document adds, full council has the power to decide on the way forward for each site and is due to meet on Wednesday, February the 25th.
Woman and girl feared that they would be raped. A man followed a woman and a girl home, causing them to fear they were going to be raped. Dominic Crumby of Orchard Portman Taunton, formerly of Daniel Street Ryde, appeared before Isle of Wight magistrates via video link on Friday, February the 13th. At previous hearings in December last year and November 2024, the 27-year-old admitted assault by beating, theft from a shop and 2 public order offences between September 24, 2024 and January the 14th, 2025. Prosecutor Serena Edwards said Crumby attempted to get on a bus at Ryde bus station at around 7:50 p.m. on October the 7th, 2024. The court heard he was banned from all Southern Vectis buses at the time, and when the bus came to a stop at traffic lights, the driver noticed Crumby, who had gained entry through the emergency exit, sitting on the back seat. Crumby was told to get off, and when he slammed the emergency door in frustration, it made contact with the driver's head, causing an injury. A few months later, on January the 14th, Crumby was reported to police for following 2 females in Ryde. At around 9 a.m, a woman was returning home, and when she went to shut the front door, she noticed Crumby next to her, said Miss Edwards. The court heard he said bad things were going to happen and there was something different about the day. Crumby planted his foot in the threshold of the door, and when his victim kicked his foot away and closed the door, he lingered outside for some time. Earlier that day, at around 7 a.m, Miss Edwards said Crumby had followed a young girl home. She said he was caught staring at her, matched her pace, and walked so close she could feel his breath. Later that same day, his victim saw him a second time. Miss Edwards said he followed her once again, standing in her driveway after she returned home, lingering outside for around 15 minutes. On both occasions, the court heard his victim feared sexual assault or rape. Michael McGoldrick, defending, directed magistrates to Crumby's probation report. He said Crumby had been detained under the Mental Health Act and remained in hospital 11 months later. Crumby was made subject of a 12-month community order to include 15 rehabilitation days, £100 compensation to the bus driver and £24 to Tesco.
Cracks appear at Old Town Hall. An iconic municipal building dating from the 17th century will undergo repairs after the appearance of a significant crack and ongoing movement. County Hall granted Newtown Old Town Hall's owner, the National Trust, listed building consent for a works scheme to ensure the Grade 2 structure on Town Lane is secured into the future. The Town Hall is important to the wider history of the National Trust, being the second building restored and then donated to the charity. Approved plans include groundworks to remedy structural movement, as well as internal and external works, a chimney removal and rebuilding and brickwork, roof and joinery repairs. County Hall's decision report says the most significant part of the works involves the provision of a concrete raft under the north side of the building. The highest level of intervention is the concrete raft, but the only potential harm that would result involves the removal of the stone slabs in the basement and relaying. A record of their existing position would be made, but despite this and careful removal, there would inevitably be some damage. However, it is likely to be minimal, and this harm is outweighed by the benefit of stabilising the building.
And now we're moving on to Wight memories and nostalgia. 125 years ago, in February 1901, a public meeting was held at Bembridge Schoolroom to consider the installation of a permanent water supply in the village. Standpipes were erected to supply water during the summer months, and it was decided the council should meet with Brading Town Council to decide the best way forward. The Isle of Wight Teachers Association described school attendance on the island as scandalous. In 1 week, just 42% of children were in their lessons. A Bembridge mother was delighted when she received letters from both her sons who were serving in the Boer War.
100 years ago, in February 1926, the chairman of St Helens Parish Council was accused of bias when he made the casting vote in an election for a new clerk. Opponents to his decision walked out of the meeting. The Isle of Wight branch of the Pharmaceutical Society held its first annual dinner at Week's Restaurant, Newport.
75 years ago, in February 1951, over £300 worth of jewellery was stolen during a raid at Hobbs Jewellers on the High Street in Ryde. Potato planting on the island had to be delayed following the highest February rainfall in at least 66 years. A plea to spare the town's ratepayers the expense of Festival of Britain celebrations was heard at Ryde Businessmen's Dinner. Chairman Mr C. Shepherd said the celebration should be paid for by the council and town's businesses. An extension of the churchyard at Land End Road in Bembridge was approved.
50 years ago, in February 1976, a protest was made to the island planning authorities about the mutilation of trees in the Undercliff area of Ventnor. Non-emergency admissions to the island's hospitals were restricted as medical staff fell victim to a flu epidemic. The virus struck down an estimated 10% of the island's doctors and nurses. A 63-year-old freshwater man received the Queen's Commendation for Brave Conduct Medal after he intervened when he saw a man being attacked by 4 youths at Yarmouth Harbour. He was kicked several times to the head and needed stitches. Now moving on to my view. The government wants to restrict your right to trial by jury. The government wants to restrict your right to a trial by jury. It is proposing that any offence involving a penalty of less than 5, now possibly 3 years, imprisonment would be tried by a judge or a judge and 2 magistrates. This is being proposed, and we are told to reduce the backlog of 80,000 criminal cases in the Crown Courts nationally. Long delays are occurring in bringing cases to trial, but the reasons for this have nothing to do with juries and removing your right to this form of trial. In most cases will not reduce the backlog. Even if it would, those matters are already in the system. Juries have been a fundamental part of our criminal justice system since the time of King John and the Magna Carta in 1215. They work well. People convicted by a jury seldom appeal. Jurors are selected by a random selection of the electoral roll, and it is impressive that people take the responsibility of deciding cases seriously and consider the evidence carefully. Most cases have penalties that are lower than 5 years imprisonment, but may have other important ramifications. A conviction for stealing even a small amount or for a minor sexual offence can have far-reaching ramifications for the individual, and it is right that guilt or innocence is considered by unconnected and objective people rather than legal practitioners who deal with crime routinely. Here on the island, people live in a wide variety of circumstances, and it is very appropriate that they should be tried by a random selection of their fellow islanders who will be able to relate to their circumstances much better than a judge alone. Cases waiting more than 2 years for trial were rare until 2010. So what has caused the current backlog? It is a combination of things. In 2010, the government attempted to balance the government finances after the Blair-Brown years. Budget cuts that year affected every department, but were severe in the Ministry of Justice, causing reduced funding for the courts and legal aid, which then started pushing up the backlog.
That was made worse by the pandemic, when we could not hold courts at all, and through the last 15 years by Parliament inventing new offences with penalties that mean they must be tried in a Crown Court. The reduced budget has never been made up and is not being made up by the current government. That means buildings are not maintained, falling into disuse when they need repairs, they are short of staff, photocopiers are out of date, and so on. There is also a shortage of judges and barristers, as legal aid for the payment of lawyers has been repeatedly cut or frozen for the last 25 years, which has led to a reduction in the number of barristers doing criminal law. The reduced budget for the Ministry of Justice means that about 80 or 90 courtrooms around the country that could be trying cases in any given week are closed. The island has only one Crown Court sitting in Newport, and that too has had its sitting days reduced. Newport Crown Court and Portsmouth Crown Court have among the shortest backlogs of cases in the country. Criminal trials elsewhere are currently being set for dates in 2028 and beyond. On the island, by contrast, the court is setting trial dates later this year, although sometimes they cannot be met. It is deeply regrettable when anyone must wait for a trial, be they a witness, victim of crime, or a defendant, but we must deal fairly and properly with everyone, despite the lack of resources to do so more speedily. But it is no excuse to replace a tried and trusted system and take away rights that we have enjoyed for centuries. And now in public information, headline reads, "Beware the AI voice control scammers." What is AI voice cloning? Voice cloning is when AI technology is used to create a replica of your voice, and scammers have the technology to do just this. National Trading Standards has identified a scam that is becoming more prevalent and is leading to unauthorised direct debits being set up on victims' accounts without their knowledge. You will receive a call out of the blue asking you to participate in a lifestyle survey. They will ask lots of questions, and along with harvesting your information, they are using their technology to clone your voice, thus enabling them to set up payments from your bank account. Keep yourself and your money safe by never giving out your information over the phone when someone has called you out of the blue. Install some kind of call blocking. This could be a free system provided by your call provider or a phone that has the capability to block calls. And for more information, go to www.iow.gov.uk, Article 2021. Scam, calls or text, which is an Isle of Wight Council website with advice. Check the number that has called you on Who Called Me, United Kingdom's free reverse phone lookup at www.whocalled.co.uk. It's very sad that we have to be so suspicious of everyone and everything. However, this will help to keep you safe from scammers. Reporting a scam and for advice on scams, call the Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline on 0345 404 0506. To report a scam, call Report Fraud on 0300 123 2040.
And now for What's On. Beginning with Shanklin Theatre, where tickets can be reserved by ringing 01983 868 000 for the box office. Beginning in March, Sunday the 1st, Choose George, celebrating George Michael. Tuesday the 3rd, Shanklin Theatre Tour 2026. Thursday the 5th, Matt Ford, Defying Calamity. Friday the 6th, the West End Tenors. Saturday the 7th, A Night of 1,000 Freddies 2026. And Wednesday the 25th, Madame Butterfly, Ukrainian National Opera. Then in April, Tuesday the 2nd until Sunday the 5th, the Island Savoyards are presenting the Great British Bake Off musical. On Saturday the 11th, Jack Up the 60s with the Zoots 2026. Saturday the 18th, Lawrence Knight's The Bowie Experience. Wednesday the 22nd, Wham! The Show starring Jake Quickenden. Thursday the 23rd, Shanklin Theatre Tour 2026. Friday the 24th, The Furries Farewell Tour. And Thursday the 30th, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Curtain Call Creative.
On Wednesday the 11th of March, the West White Drop-In Support Group for people living with diabetes at 2 p.m. This is a support group for people living with diabetes, and all are welcome at Freshwater Methodist Church, which is on Brookside Road in Freshwater. You can call 0741 5399 102. On Tuesday the 17th of March, the Newport Drop-In Support Group at 1 p.m. and this is also a support group for people living with diabetes, and all are welcome at St Thomas of Canterbury Catholic Church, which is on 69B High Street in Newport. And again, you can call 0741 5399 102. And then there is a talk about anorexia and bulimia, which will be held at Building 41 in Newport Road Northwood from 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday as part of Eating Disorders Week. West White MP Richard Quigley, who is appealing to the government to give the island funds for mental health, will be appearing on video talking about his interest in eating disorder issues. There will also be information from the Isle of Wight Youth Trust and Beat Eating Disorders about the work they do. It's free admission, and donations to Isle of Wight Youth Trust are welcome.
And now, letters. Plaque, tree and calligraphy. A letter from Nick Dawley Brown of Brook and Motterston PCC. On reading your article in the County Press on the 13th of February 26 about the 1957 air disaster at Shalcombe, I thought your readers might be interested to know that the memorial plaque featured was donated in 2015 by Harry Green from North London, whose mother Clara died in the crash. Harry had learnt that commemoration services were held at St Mary's Church in Brook on the 50th and 51st anniversaries of the crash. At the second of these services, conducted by the then Archdeacon Caroline Baston, a tree was planted at the site, and a plaque donated by the aerospace engineering firm Oldland CNC of Bristol was dedicated and placed on the rear wall of St Mary's. It features typography designed by local artist Dick Davis, a piece of calligraphy listing the names of the 46 passengers and crew who lost their lives is displayed in the church at the time of the All Saints service in November each year.
Preserve Island Haven to Nature, writes AP, an island resident. I am writing to all those that live on this garden island, and also those that love it so because their heart is part of it. Please do not destroy what is an island haven to nature and the human race that have trod its many byways. Beware, there is only one island, so treasure it for all our sakes and not cement every mile of it. We cannot replace what has been erased by careless destruction, so take care all those that impose their will and save this beautiful island.
A letter from Vic Farrow of Shanklin. Rearranging the deck chairs. Dear Editor, things only go from bad to worse for the government. When you look at the list of U-turns, the dire state of unemployment, and the mess with the hospitality sector, the prospect of the promised growth gets further in the distance. Within the country's problems mentioned, there is a consistent theme, and I'm sorry to say it, It is the Chancellor. Do we not have someone with a better understanding of basic economics in the government who can sort the mess out and avoid the continuing U-turns? So, before reshuffling the cabinet, like the chairs on the Titanic, perhaps an initial change of Chancellor might help.
Disruption from the harbour, writes Richard Eltringham of East Cowes. May I applaud Whitelink for once again proving the island already has a perfectly reliable fixed link, the constant, unwavering connection between our ferry firms, and yet another reason nothing can run on time. This week's achievement, a vessel damaged while still in port, is a master stroke. Why wait for the perils of the Solent when you can achieve disruption without even leaving the harbour? We islanders endlessly debate bridges and tunnels, but really what's the point? The only fixed link we can depend on is the absolute certainty that a ferry will be out of action for reasons that grow more imaginative by the month. It's practically a cultural asset. Perhaps next week a sailing will be cancelled due to unexpected interaction with gravity, or a crew member startled by the idea of movement. Until then, I thank our operators for their most consistent service on intentional comedy.
A letter from Islanders for Europe. Britain's relationship with Europe discussed. Islanders for Europe is a group set up after the 2016 referendum on UK membership of the EU. The vote in 2016 was binary, in versus out, with a lot of promises made by the Leave proponents, many of which have not materialised. 10 years later, the world is a very different place from that of 2016. Alliances have shifted in ways considered unimaginable then. Ukraine invaded, with a threat to both European stability and world peace. The UK must now reflect on who its closest allies are. Do we look to Europe or the USA? On Friday, February the 13th, members of Islanders for Europe met Conservative East White MP Joe Robertson at Key Arts for a question and answer about Britain's current and future relationship with Europe. In the hour we had together with Joe, a lot of ground was covered, with many good points raised and answered. Subjects discussed were the reintroduction in 2027 of the Erasmus scheme, as Erasmus Plus for travel and study in Europe for young people, the need for more frictionless trade for UK businesses with our European neighbours, and the desirability of a possible customs union with the EU being raised by a member of the group. The very thorny subject of illegal immigration was touched on, leading to questions on future possibility of restructuring the European Convention on Human Rights. Another challenging issue discussed was the range of problems relating to Ireland, both in trade and citizenship with the Republic of Ireland, remaining inside the EU and Northern Ireland now outside. While the consensus of the meeting was the necessity of building much closer relationships with our European neighbours, there was reluctant recognition that rejoining the EU itself might still be some years off. Joe Robertson said, "I enjoyed the debate and exchange of ideas with the local Islanders for Europe group on a wide range of topics. Notwithstanding some fundamental points of difference, such as rejoining the EU, we all agreed that enhancing strong economic, social and security ties with our European neighbours is in the UK's best interests, particularly in such an uncertain world."
Hans Bromwich from Cowes writes, looking for straight answers. Dear editor, let me get this straight. Keir Starmer is saying his choice of ambassador to America, Peter Mandelson, wasn't truthful. Now he's saying his recent head of communications, Matthew Doyle, who he's promoted to the House of Lords, also wasn't truthful. A head of communications and ambassador who weren't truthful? Really? Yet Mandelson and Doyle were appointed for their skill sets. Keir Starmer had a 2-week window during which he could have withdrawn Doyle's peerage. He didn't. Starmer never seems able to answer direct questions with a straight answer. Why? Misleading, or should I say lying, seems to come naturally to Blairites. Remember Tony Blair's 20-minute threat, we'll all be in annihilation by weapons of mass destruction? This was followed by the mysterious murder of David Kelly, the senior inspector who said Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction. During last week's urgent parliamentary debate on our MOD's relationship with Palantir, a company which proudly boasts their weapons are battlefield tested, presumably on defenceless civilians in Gaza, a question hung over whether any minutes were taken during Starmer and Mandelson's secret meeting in America with Palantir, and how such a huge contract, £250 million, was awarded without any open tendering. Labour MP John McDonnell may have shed light on the subject towards the end of the parliamentary debate by revealing Labour received its largest ever donation, £4 million, from a Cayman Islands registered hedge fund which shares worth of hundreds of millions of pounds in private health firm and arms manufacturer Palantir, a company that West Streeting has given our personal NHS data to. Green Party leader Zach Polanski has said that the donation shows Labour now stands for multimillionaires and billionaires over our working class communities. He may well have a point. And that brings us to the end of our Talking News today, and so therefore it's goodbye from me, Maurice.
And goodbye from me, Carolyn.
The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the Scaffolding News follows that.
Hello.
Kellogg's Crunchy Nut Honey and Nut Cornflakes cereal 720 grams. Ingredients: sugar, peanuts 6%, barley malt extract, molasses, honey.
Well, later today, a campaign to help visually impaired consumers choose and eat healthier food with the help of specialist QR codes. But first, what duty of care are we owed by holiday companies? And how can we be sure when we book that we're likely to get it? Sharon and Tony Stockman thought they'd found the holiday of a lifetime when they booked with Cunard for a 19-day cruise. But it didn't turn out that way. Tony and Sharon join us. Sharon, I'll start with you. Tell us about the holiday you booked and what you were expecting.
Yeah, so the first thing to say is we'd sailed on the Queen Mary, Cunard's Queen Mary, before on a transatlantic crossing. We'd loved it. And so when we were thinking about another holiday, we decided to book this 19-day cruise with them, leaving from New York, going around the Caribbean and ultimately ending up in Southampton. And at the point of booking, I contacted Cunard and we have a conversation about particular needs. I was very clear with them that we were both totally blind. We'd sailed with them before. And we discussed what we would require, which was not that extensive. It was that we would want orientation on arrival, just to remind us really of the ship, help to register at the muster station in the unlikely event of emergency. If possible, accessible menus, but definitely an accessible daily programme of all the things that go on board. And finally, that when we were leaving the ports to go on the pre-booked excursions, that a member of staff would guide us off because it tends to vary depending on the port. And we were assured that none of that was, too much to ask and it could be provided.
And all this was well before you actually went on board, started the holiday?
Months and months before.
So what went wrong?
The orientation didn't materialise. The muster station did, because we forced the issue, because we've cruised many times on many lines, we knew how important this was. The accessible menus didn't materialise, but our waiter was absolutely super and read them to us. We eventually got the daily programme, but we had to actually go seek it out and queue up and get that sorted. So we did eventually get that. But the main crux of the problem was prior to the first port tour that we had, we went to the tour desk to organise how we'd meet the person to guide us off. And we were told in no uncertain terms they didn't have a system for that. And that actually it was the policy of Cunard that if you were blind, you needed to travel with a sighted person to accompany you. And this was all done in public. You know, there were people queuing up behind us who heard all the conversation. What we eventually did was we presented ourselves at the purser's office. We were told the same thing about this change in policy 2 or 3 times. And to be totally honest, we had to just argue our case. And we felt so humiliated. And the words like, you need to be independent, and things like this were used. And, you know, we both felt about 2 foot high.
And Tony, if I can bring you in, what reasons were you actually given on board for this not being able to happen?
Well, this is a real discontinuity, right? Because we were told that it was the policy, and yet the staff to passenger ratio on there was 1 to 2. So, you know, loads of staff. And as I said to them at the time, you don't need somebody very experienced to do this. You could give us one of your least experienced crew members simply to guide us along the gangplank onto shore to meet the tour bus or whatever it was on that excursion.
Because you're making the point that you're both very confident, blind people, used to travelling around.
Travelled widely, yeah.
Can I ask you, what effect did this have on your holiday?
Well, I wanted to get off, If it hadn't have been for my very sensible husband, I'd have got off at New York on the way back and flown home. You know, a number of guests came up to us and said, oh, my goodness, were you able to resolve it? Oh, this is awful. We're in our 80s and, you know, it's fine for us to do it, but you in your 60s, fit and healthy. I personally was angry, but I did feel humiliated.
The prize to hold out for on the part of the journey from New York back to Southampton was that it was the cruise that has the Cheltenham Literary Festival on board. So, you know, that's why I was so keen to persuade Sharon not to get off at New York.
And what were you told after all this? What were you told when you got back?
Well, I sent in a lengthy email to customer services and to the chief executive in UK, who I never got a response from. They were telling us the staff on the shore didn't understand the policies. And, you know, they just said, oh, it's a training issue. We'll sort it out. It's a training issue. And we've not felt reassured by that because they've said, come back, sail with us again. But it costs thousands. And yes, if it's a fabulous holiday of a lifetime, it's worth it. But we don't feel reassured.
Well, we invited Cunard onto this programme to explain their side of the story. They said they were unable to take part in the programme, but this is what they said in their statement to us.
We're sorry to hear about Mr. and Mrs. Stockman's experience and would never wish for any of our guests to feel uncomfortable when travelling independently with us. We are committed to supporting all guests with needs so they can travel with dignity and respect. While there are some practical limitations on board, our ships are fully inclusive and ensure information is shared clearly and consistently with guests ahead of their voyage. On this occasion, this standard was not met on board, and we have taken steps to prevent this from happening again. This includes working closely with our partners to enhance training and ensure that assistive embarkation and disembarkation support is provided appropriately and with confidence. In addition, we are collaborating with charity partners to deliver specialist training focused on sight loss awareness, communication and effective orientation support, helping to further improve the service we provide on board. We are sorry for the difficulties these guests experience and hope they will choose to travel with us again and experience the improvements now in place.
Well, whether they will travel again with you, Cunard, is not yet established. Also joining us, though, is the Independent's travel correspondent and general travel guru, Simon Calder. Simon, you've heard Sharon and Tony's story and Cunard's response. What do you make of what you've heard?
Well, I must say the response suggests that Sharon and Tony were absolutely right to expect just the minimum of please help us leave the ship and please help us back on the ship. And it sounds very much as though Cunard has taken that, dare I say it, on board, quite right too. Worth saying that cruising really suits people who are blind or have low vision and want to explore new destinations, because whatever your sight ability or not, one key aspect is that you can experience a whole succession of fascinating, rewarding locations, and you only have to unpack once in your cabin.
This was one of the things Sharon actually said was, I think the way you put it, Sharon, was the boat does the travelling for you.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, and you get to know your cabin and the ship really well. Of course, the cruise companies run orientation tours to allow you to understand it, and quite right too, the cruise companies all say they very much want to welcome people who are blind or have low vision on board, but clearly there's a long way to go.
Yeah, because Simon, there are some puzzling aspects to this story, not least that the resistance to offering some pretty basic help to Sharon and Tony seems to have continued throughout the voyage, even after they must have realised that Tony and Sharon were competent and just needed a little support in specific situations. I can understand misunderstanding maybe right at the beginning by one member of staff, but can you shed any light on how that could have happened?
This seems to be a kind of collective failure, or people not being prepared to step up. As we were hearing from Sharon and Tony, it was almost as though, our conditions say no, not quite computer says no, but our practices don't allow this. At least you've got some very good clarification from Cunard. It's fair to say, I think, and I don't wish to speak on behalf of the cruise industry, but they would prefer it from their point of view. It would make their lives a little easier if a person who was blind or had low vision was travelling with a sighted companion. But, of course, it's perfectly reasonable, as Sharon and Tony were saying, to welcome guests on board, make sure they have a great experience and leave them with nothing but happy memories. But something's gone wrong here.
I think that's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you what responsibility we as blind travellers have in terms of the information we give to the company, but it seems quite clear that Sharon and Tony did give them all the information well in advance.
Yeah, and it's absolutely essential. For instance, Norwegian Cruise Line has accessibility coordinators, and they basically just say, right, before your cruise, you're going to have a long conversation. We'll talk through everything from, what happens on the first day when you get there, what braille and tactile signage there may be, talk to you about service animals, perhaps, if that's appropriate. So, the cruise companies know what they need to do, and really there's no excuse for the way they were treated. And let's hope, and it certainly sounds as though from the statement that Cunard gave you, that they accept that they need to do better, and well, hopefully for Sharon and Tony, but certainly for other people who are blind or have low vision, things will improve in future.
So just very quickly, Sharon and Tony, will you be travelling with Cunard again?
I think it's something we'll think about. I mean, I might add bar staff, restaurant staff, honestly, they are such a credit to Cunard. Yeah. They were brilliant. And they all said to us, we love seeing you two on board. It's been a pleasure to assist. So it isn't the frontline staff. I mean, they are a credit to Cunard. Our difficulties were with people in more senior roles, I suppose.
Sharon and Tony Stockman and Simon Calder, thank you very much indeed. Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about the amount of ultra-processed food in our diet and its effect on our health, not least from Dr Chris Van Tulleken here on Radio 4, of course, whose work on this inspired one of our next guests. Of course, careful reading of which ingredients are in what you're buying gives most people the opportunity to avoid them. Not that they always do, but that's not a choice that visually impaired people have, and it's this that's led Ailey Morrison to start planning a campaign to put this right. Ailey, what's led you to creating this campaign, and what's been your own experience?
This came around because, along with my visual impairment, I have a rare condition called Joubert syndrome. And within this condition, I am prone to liver and kidney disease. So keeping my diet healthy is crucial. My mum made sure from a young age that I learned about healthy foods, giving me good hearty meals and healthy snacks for at school. But even though I knew how to live a healthy life, due to being a disabled young person in secondary school, I got bullied and started to use the food we associate with ultra-processed food as a coping mechanism.
And what led you to think that this was perhaps a problem that blind and partially sighted people might be particularly prone to?
So I am a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament for Haggai. I'm part of RNIB Scotland for young people, and we have a Zoom call every fortnight. And looking around the room, I saw with my useful vision that everyone was not taking care of their health. And
You're being very tactful here. They were a bit overweight. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I really wanted to help in the best way possible.
So just explain exactly what it is that you're suggesting, which would help at least some visually impaired people avoid high levels of these ultra-processed foods.
I'm calling for food products to have Navilens on them, so when blind and visually impaired people scan this colourful QR code, they will not only hear what the food product is, but also the ingredients list. And through hearing the ingredients, they can identify if it is ultra-processed food and then make a decision on that, whether they go and buy it.
Well, we're also joined by Jose Castillon of Navilens. Before we ask you about your thoughts about Ailey's campaign, just explain a bit more about how Navilens works, because I understand it'll also give you details of not only what's in the product and in what quantities, but also will help you locate it as well.
Yes, so Navilens is a free app. And as Eli was saying, you just need to point the Navilens codes and they will be detected very easily from a very far distance without focusing to the code. First, it tells you audibly the name of the product. And then it asks you two possibilities. One is to locate the code, which is super helpful, not only in a supermarket, but also at home, to be able to precisely locate the product.
On your left, 2 feet, on your left. Here.
But also to get more information. Basically, it contains exactly the same information that the packaging contains. So we can get information such as the ingredient, the allergens, how to prepare, etc.
So what do you think about this as a use for Ailey's campaign? Had this occurred to you that it perhaps would help with healthy eating?
Absolutely. And to be honest, Eli, and congratulations, I think it's a fantastic initiative. There is a research from the RNIB that says that 9 out of 10 people who are blind and partially sighted, they are unable to read information on a standard packaging. That means that they don't have access to the same information as someone who can see. A blind person, as a partially sighted person, deserves exactly the same access to product information as anyone else. And this is about that, about giving equal access to information. This is what Navilens can do.
So I suppose the key thing in that case is to get as many food companies as possible to agree to have your codes on their products. How is that going? How much have you been able to persuade companies to include the code on their packaging?
Well, I have to say that the UK market is growing and we have a lot of Navilens codes on the supermarket shelves like Kellogg's, Pringles, Weetabix, Robinson's Fruit Suit, Strongbow, Pantene, Ariel, Chicago Town. And the process is quite simple. It's just to contact Navilens and we will have a meeting with them to explain what can we do together. And the best thing to do it is just visiting our website, and we have there all our contact details.
But presumably they have to be prepared to reimagine their packaging design and then produce different versions, don't they?
Yes and no, because the only thing that we do is adding an ambulance code in front of bike. This is super important for us, the design aspects, and we can do it in several ways because we have companies which have an ambulance code in 6 millimeters, which is super small, so we can adapt to small sizes. Some other companies have adapted an ambulance code onto their own brand colors.
Ailey, just to bring you back, what's the next step for you with this campaign?
Yeah, so right now I'm in the consultation phase. So for the next steps, obviously, to speak to Naviland, which is great to...
Which you're now doing.
Speak to them today, yes. And then talk to supermarket shops as well. And then I wanted to bring all of this evidence to the Health Secretary.
OK. Jose Castillon and Ailey Morrison, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
And that's it for today. We welcome your comments and your questions as always. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk or leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips news the week commencing the 24th of February 26.
In the Newport area, Unity Hall, 20 St Thomas's Square, 140 to 141 High Street, Guildhall, Key Street.
In the Ryde area, the Nationwide Building Society at 3 St Thomas Square, James House in Church Lane, 141 High Street and Flat 2 in 15 George Street. Also in the Ryde area, the Skips at 63 Swanmore Road.
Cowes and East Cowes area, the Portland Inn, Worsley Road, Gurnard, Seabreeze, York Avenue, East Cowes, White Shipyard, Columbine House, Albany Road, East Cowes, 34 Bridge Road, Number 1 and July Cottage, Bars Hill. In just the Cowes area, Skips, between 67 and 69 Pelham Road, Princes Street, 18 Albert Street.
In the Ventnor area, the Old Town Hall Court in Albert Street, Ventnor Youth Centre in Victoria Street and Lewis Cottage in Market Street.
In the Sandown area, 52 Fitzroy Street, the Bayshore Hotel, Esplanade.
And in the Yarmouth area, numbers 2 and 3 in the High Street.